The new pantheon of Egyptian deities has been one of the most fascinating inclusions into the MCU as of late, and Moon Knight has been a refreshing change of pace for the modern MCU era. Rather than appearing on Earth in their own physical forms like Thor or the Asgardians have been known to do, the Egyptian gods instead utilize human avatars to speak and act on their behalf. And throughout the Moon Knight series, we have come to learn a little bit about what happened to these Egyptian gods in their past that may have led to this. We hear vague contradictions between whether or not they abandoned humanity or humanity abandoned them, as Khonshu quarrels with the Ennead, and we are left to deduce what exactly happened that drove the Egyptian gods away. Is it possible, however, that the event which drove the Egyptian gods to flee Earth is actually related to other gods? What if they are actually related to another well-known pantheon of gods that has existed in the MCU since 2011? Well, stick with us today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, and let's explore the theory that it was actually the Asgardians that drove the Egyptian gods away from humanity, and touch on what role the Greek gods had to play in all of this. During the meeting between the Ennead, we learned that Khonshu remained behind for what he claimed was not abandoning humanity, implying that humanity needed the Egyptian gods, likely for some sort of fight. Yet, they ultimately refused to help humanity. Therefore, the Egyptians decided to abandon Earth, which based on actual history of the Egyptian Empire likely would have been around the year 1000 BC. This estimate is based on the actual height of the real-life Egyptian Empire during the peak of their military power and their hold on the Nile, just before they began to descend into prominence and significance. And if the Egyptian gods were assisting in the construction of ancient Egypt, then this would most likely be a firm indication of around when they left Earth. If they left shortly following the peak of the empire, then the slow decline into the modern age could be attributed to their abandonment, and abandonment of humanity. But it's important to mention that they could have left much later. It's just highly unlikely that they left any earlier than this. If Odin was 5,000 years old when he died in 2017 AD, then that would mean that he is in the prime of his life around the time that the Egyptian gods would have been in power. And we also know that Hela would have been by his side at this time, conquering the 9 realms and growing the Asgardian Empire to the prosperity that they knew it could one day achieve. We get glimpses of Odin in around 1000 AD in Tonsberg, Norway, where he looks to be roughly middle-aged at the time. For reference, Thor is roughly 1500 years old, putting him 1/3 of the way through his natural life, or roughly 30 years old in human terms. He was not born until roughly 500 AD, however, leaving an extensive history for his father and his sister to conquer the galaxy before he ever existed, which we come to learn about in the events of Thor Ragnarok. Is it possible that in this time, Hela and Odin invaded Earth while the Egyptians were at the height of their power, and subsequently drove the Egyptians into hiding, causing them to abandon humanity and leaving Khonshu to deviate from his own path? Let's look at a lot of the details. We know that Odin and Hela did in fact invade Earth, as she attributes the 9 realms to their conquest and control, stating that Odin wanted to limit their control only after they had already conquered all 9 of the realms. What we don't know, however, is when this all took place, but if we are going off of real life history and records of Norse mythology, then we can learn when the Norse gods rose to prominence, and that may give us a better idea of when it happened in the MCU. The earliest confirmation of stories regarding the Norse gods being recorded in modern history dates back to the 12th century. However, many historians avidly believe that not only are the roots of Norse mythology far older than this, but are older than Christianity itself, which was the catalyst for the shift in time measurement that we now use today. This could mean that in the MCU, legends of Norse gods began due to their ongoing conflict with the Egyptian pantheon and their conquest of Earth. But the exact stories were lost to history until the early 12th century, and there are a few interesting ideas to support this claim. Primarily, what does it mean for the Asgardians to have conquered Earth? What does that look like? We know that Earth is called Midgard, and Hela considers it to be a part of the Asgardian Empire. However, there are no Asgardians present on Earth at any time. Thor himself is the first known instance of Asgardian intervention since Odin's conflict with the Frost Giants in Tonsberg, and humans are only just now learning of the existence of the Norse gods, and their actual existence, that is. So this leaves the question, who did they take Earth from? And who did Hela and Odin have to conquer to claim the Earth? The term Hela uses, conquest, implies that they took control of the land from somebody else and exerted their own will over it. But they certainly didn't take it from humanity, as humans are free to live their daily lives without ever even knowing of Asgard's existence. In fact, Asgardians have been shown protecting humans on numerous occasions, including Odin against the frost giants. It's also important to note that this is not in reference to Odin's shift in benevolent rulership, as he only became benevolent only after all 9 realms had already been conquered and were already under Asgard's rule. He conquered Earth violently with Hela, we just have to figure out when. At some point in the past, Asgard with Odin and Hela at the helm of the conflict took control of Earth away from somebody else, somebody who was presiding over humanity, and at some point there was another faction that held control of the Earth. According to the timeline of real life history and what we know so far about the Egyptian gods, it makes sense that Odin and Hela took the Earth from the Egyptian pantheon. But this raises another question: why the Egyptians and not the Greeks? It's also important to briefly mention the Greek gods, as they are set to make their debut this coming July in Love and Thunder, and explain exactly why we don't believe it was the Greeks that the Norse conquered, and it wasn't the Greeks that ultimately were conquered by Hela and Odin. The height of the Greek Empire took place around 500 and 300 BC, but it's important to mention that the Greek gods as individuals also carried over into the Roman Empire, which ushered in the turn of the new millennium and was one of the single most prolific empires in history. While this pantheon would have been much more powerful if their empire was anything to go off of, and they also have much more in line with the timeline, as they would have been present in between the height of the Egyptian and the Norse reign of gods, we do not believe that the Norse gods took control of Earth from the Greeks, and this is due to a seemingly innocuous line from the Eternals film. During the dinner scene in the Eternals cite Thor as a longtime friend, implying that they were close friends with the Norse gods of Earth the last time that they were present, and friends with the Asgardians, as they claim that Thor was still a small child, likely around 1000 AD when the flashback scene in the first Thor movie took place. We also know that they were close friends with the Greek gods, seeing as they have been confused for Greek myths and stories for centuries, placing them firmly in Greece among the Greek people and gods for years on end. The legend of Icarus, as told by the Greek people, was based on the eternal Icarus, as were the stories of Athena, and so on and so forth. If they are so closely tied to the Greek gods and represented the Greek pantheon to some degree, then it doesn't make sense that they would be friends with the people who conquered them, that being the Asgardians. If the Norse gods showed up on Earth, waged war with the Greeks, and took control of the Earth, then it's likely that the Eternals would have a bitter rivalry with Thor and his people, and they most certainly would not view him as a longtime friend. We also know that the Egyptians banished Khonshu for nearly exposing them, implying that they may have been in hiding long after the descent of the Egyptian Empire, and this might be attributed to their ongoing conflict with the Norse pantheon or the Asgardians, all without Thor or any of the modern Asgardians likely being aware of this, seeing as their history was covered up by Odin all those years ago. Nonetheless, it is likely that it is Hela and Odin that drove the Egyptian gods into hiding and away from Earth. But anyway, friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think the Asgardians are the reason why the Egyptians are no longer involved in human affairs? And if so, what other details of the past conflict do you think we may have missed in this theory? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. Hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and I hope you have a great day.